Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. Welcome to another episode of Haqiqatjou, where we discuss religion and politics, the two least controversial subjects. As always, I am your host, Daniel Haqiqatjou, and we have a great show for you lined up, talking about yet another scandal, quote-unquote scandal, yet another da'i or prominent Muslim figure, scholar, embroiled in accusations of wrongdoing. And today we're going to investigate or analyze some of these claims based on what is available publicly. And I'm going to be addressing some of the accusations, some of the assumptions built into how these scandals play out in the public. We're going to look at some of the voice recordings that have been published publicly by the accuser, the person who is accusing, the Muslim woman who is accusing Muhammad HIJAB. We're going to look at the reactions, some of the reactions from the enemies of Islam who are using this scandal or these accusations to further their cause against Islam and Muslims. And yeah, we're going to talk about a lot of different things. I'm going to, as always, be looking at the chat, looking at your comments. If you have something to contribute, feel free to put it in the chat, but keep your comments respectful and according to the proper Islamic adab, which we're going to discuss in this episode, inshallah. So I hope it's going to be beneficial and that you'll learn a lot from this, because we have a lot of growing to do, at least when it comes to Muslims online. There's a lot of growing to do because scandals like this come and go all the time. Accusations are made all the time. How are we supposed to respond? How are we supposed to deal with that without being completely lost or destroyed or confused? That's what we want to address ultimately, inshallah. So as always, don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter. The link to the newsletter is below. Sign up if you haven't already. That helps us stay in touch with you as needed. So let me give you an overview of what this scandal actually entails. There's a woman, Muslim woman, who claims that she was married to Muhammad HIJAB. And Muhammad HIJAB made promises to her for a normal marriage, living with her and having children with her, and etc., etc., maintaining her and so forth. And Muhammad HIJAB, according to her, backed out of this agreement, and he went back on his promises, and he claimed that this marriage is only for intimacy purposes. This is what she claims. And now she wants to get justice. She wants justice, and as we'll see in her own words, she thinks that she is doing a big service to the ummah by exposing preachers like Muhammad HIJAB who are confusing the youth on marriage, and she wants to expose this so that people do not lose their faith, do not lose their aqidah. She wants to bring accountability. This is her claim. Now, Muhammad HIJAB, as far as he presents, hasn't directly responded, but he's posted videos from others like Ali Dawa, another channel with a speaker called False Accusations. Also, he's linked to that. And they claim that there was no marriage. There was no marriage between HIJAB and this Muslim sister. In fact, this Muslim sister is lying. She is just obsessed and making claims about her that make her look very bad, actually. That make her look like she might be on a path towards revenge because she just is obsessed with Muhammad HIJAB. So these are the two claims that are being made, and it's left to the court of public opinion to decide who is right and who is wrong. Both sides claim to have evidence for their claims. both sides claim that, well, here are witnesses, here is testimony, here are messages that we've screenshotted from WhatsApp or internet comments or tweets. And both sides claim that, well, this evidence is fabricated. This evidence is fabricated. Then now there's even testimony, recorded testimony from both sides, and they're claiming, oh, this is AI generated. This is not actual, an actual confession, or this is not actual this and that. So this leaves Muslims very confused. This leaves Muslims, well, how do we make heads or tails of this? Who is in the right? Who is in the wrong? Where does justice lie? That is the big question that is on everyone's mind. And the question that we should ask ourselves is, how can we judge? How can anyone judge in this situation of who's right or who's wrong? We don't have access to the evidence, and we don't have any power to demand either party to show us, show us what you said. Where are the phone records? Where are the travel logs? Where are the receipts? We don't have that kind of investigative power to do that. We can only see what each party chooses to show. So, and obviously they're only going to show what is in favor of their own claim, their own perspective. Even if they are completely honest, even if they're completely honest about about what they believe, they're not deliberately trying to deceive. They're still biased. It's still from their perspective. So where is an objective authority to come and adjudicate, to judge, to investigate and decide, like, okay, this person's rights have been violated and these person's rights have not been violated? There's no objective authority for this. I'm not an objective authority either. Obviously, some of you will point out that, well, Daniel, Mohammed Hijab is your friend. You have a conflict of interest, so how can you even judge on this issue? That's true in one aspect. In another aspect, people could say that, well, Daniel is not impartial because he is against Mohammed Hijab on certain issues, or he opposes or has a different perspective from Mohammed Hijab on different issues in fiqh of marriage, or red pill. Daniel and Mohammed Hijab disagree. So Daniel is biased in that sense. So you can make either case on either side. But I'm here openly saying that I'm not an objective authority. I'm not a qadi. I'm not an investigator. And so I'm not making any claim to that. But who is? Who is the objective party who can adjudicate, judge these claims? And as I've said in the past, this confusion is a symptom of a lack of Islamic authority. An Islamic political authority who has the power to make judgment, and people have to submit to the judgment of that authority. That is lacking in the world today. Yes, you have certain nations, and they have a legal system, and they have judges, and inshallah, in many of those cases, they're able to give just rulings. But there's a question about whether these nations are actually implementing Islamic standards of justice, or have they been influenced by secularism? Have they been influenced by feminism? And we see this in many Muslim countries, unfortunately, that their legal systems are contaminated with feminist ideas or secular principles, and they're not adjudicating according to Islam. Once again, the solution is khilafah. We need an independent Islamic political authority, Islamic sovereignty that can provide us this worldly justice to actually implement the Sharia without being beholden to international law, by UN human rights standards, etc., that want to impose and control how Muslims live their lives within even their own countries, even their own, let alone Western countries. So as long as that does not exist, that Islamic system does not exist, you're not going to be able to have that real justice in this dunya. That's a fact. That's an unavoidable fact. And that should motivate the Muslims to seek out and to want that system, to advocate for khilafah, to advocate for true political sovereignty for the ummah, to have governance that is actually based on the precepts and the principles of Islam, independent of outside influence or outside manipulation from the West or quote-unquote human rights standards, etc. We should all, as Muslims, advocate for that. And examples like this, examples of these disputes publicly, are reminders of this. But you don't have to wait for the next imam scandal, da'i scandal. Even in your own friend circle, even you have a Muslim friend and he's being dragged into divorce court and he is being completely ravished by a secular feminist system that is taking away his children, taking away half or more of his assets, forcing him to pay alimony in perpetuity because of a divorce. That kind of feminist system is completely contrary to Islamic justice and even basic common sense, even a non-Muslim. The non-Muslims understand that this is an unjust system, and that's part of the reason why you have a red pill movement. The whole idea of a red pill movement is to oppose a standard of legislation and adjudication that contradicts justice and fairness and what is right and wrong, even according to their fitrah, even according to a non-Muslim's fitrah. This is not right. It's not right that a man is in a marriage and then his wife cheats on him or mistreats him, and then she divorces him, and then he is not allowed to see his children, and then half of his assets are forcibly taken from him, and he is forced to pay on and on and on, alimony, child support, etc. And if he refuses to pay, they will put him in prison. This is not just. Even the non-Muslim recognizes this, and that's why you've had red pill movement, you've had a huge backlash against feminism, but to what end? They don't, the non-Muslim doesn't know the truth of Islam and the justice that's found in Islam. The non-Muslim doesn't know that the Sharia actually has the solution to these problems. The non-Muslim doesn't know. The Muslim should know that. The Muslim, the believer, should know that. And so it's very disappointing that Muslims are not advocating for true Islamic government, true Islamic governance, khilafah, Islamic courts that are going to uphold traditional Islamic law, not this kind of feminist reform, like reforming Islam to be more feminist, to give women their quote-unquote rights. That's my gripe. That's my problem whenever these kinds of scandals erupt. So I just want to make that disclaimer that I'm not an objective authority. I'm only going to present to you material that I think is relevant in you determining how to react and how to manage these kinds of attacks. Because it becomes, all of these things become an attack on Islam. It's not just Muhammad hijab that is implicated. It is the whole ummah, it is Islam that is under attack in terms of mistreating women. Islam has these bad rules that oppress women, that subjugate women. So let's look at this whole situation in a little bit more depth. So there hasn't been, if you've been following the back and forth between the two parties, you probably haven't seen these voice recordings. And this is coming from the Muslim sister. A Muslim sister put, this is on her channel, she put out a couple of videos that we'll look at, short videos, where she explains like why she's doing this. And no one has really drawn attention to this that I know of. And it's very telling. The mindset. So let's listen to this.
Ali or none of those shuyukh that got involved have ever consulted me about any of the screenshots or these things that they are presenting as if they are factual and the reason for which they made their mind about my case. He never gave me da'wah in regards to reaching out to the non-Muslims or the shaitan, I call them shaitan. Never presented me with any alternatives or told me, okay, sister, listen, we are sorry, but this is our conclusion based on X or Y and Z, or sister, we are happy to conduct our own investigations and so on. It's because
okay, so she's saying that she has reached out to different scholars or shuyukh, and she says Ali Dawa. I don't know why she would think Ali Dawa is a sheikh, but this is what she's claiming. And on the one hand, I sympathize, but on the other hand, I find it strange. I sympathize because, yeah, if you reach out to certain people, they're not going to be in a position to investigate. No one has that authority. If you're talking about the UK context, for example, who really has the authority to make a judgment? There are different councils that you can go to. And has the sister gone to those councils? Has she, have they turned her down? That's a question mark. That's a question mark. Because sometimes you do have these independent councils and they will issue khula, for example. Like they'll issue a khula, they'll dissolve a Islamic marriage Islamically by khula, for example, or they'll mediate in the case of a husband and a wife. There are those kinds of institutions that exist. Now, do they ultimately have the authority to force a husband to abide by Islam or a wife to abide by the Islamic marriage rules within fiqh? No, they don't have that authority. Only the government, the secular government, has the authority to lay down a judgment to force a husband to pay or a wife to pay or who gets custody. But these Islamic councils exist and you can go to them and they mediate or they can provide some kind of judgment. They can investigate. But she's saying that no one has agreed to investigate. No one has agreed to look into her case. So this, raises a question for me. Why? Why hasn't anyone, like someone who is a legitimate council, Islamic council, or a legitimate authority, which there are in the UK and in most of these Western countries, yet she says that there aren't. But and then when she mentions Ali Dawa, it kind of destroys a little bit of credibility. Like, why would you go to Ali Dawa? He's not a Islamic authority. He's not any kind of person that you would go to. He's not a mediator. So I sympathize. If you go to people like that, they will obviously say no. If someone came to me and said, Daniel, will you go and investigate this for me? I'll say, absolutely not. Absolutely not, because this is very in-depth. This is like, I can ask questions and see like if someone has an information that can help you, but I'm not an investigator. I'm not an authority. I'm not going to be your advocate because that's not my role. And I'm not that kind of scholar or authority to do that. So that is an interesting statement that she made.
Hijab had admitted absolutely everything in front of them, but they just simply decided to keep quiet. Based on the screenshots that I've just shared right now that are in the video screening, prove they are not photoshopped. And the screenshots he provided on their platform were fabricated. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون اللهم أجرنا في مصيبتنا واخلف لنا خيرا منها. Although subhanallah al-azim يعني hijab, and he's in a position of trust.
So she claims that she provided screenshots which are not fabricated, and all the screenshots he provided are fabricated. So how can we determine what's true or false like this?
I don't know how to emphasize enough about this, to be really honest. The only thing I could ever possibly say is this whole great scenario and scandal and so on and whatnot, I did it, and I am ready to risk absolutely everything about it.
This whole scandal, I did it. What does that mean?
He's in a position of trust. I don't know how to emphasize enough about this, to be really honest. The only thing I could ever possibly say is this whole great scenario and scandal and so on and whatnot, I did it, and I am ready to risk absolutely everything about it.
What does that mean? This whole great scandal, I did it, and I'm ready to risk everything.
Because I did it to preserve my own aqidah, my own faith. That is never going to be preserved except when I'm going to be exposing Muhammad Hijab for what he actually really did and for what he actually really is.
So I'm only doing this to preserve my aqidah, to preserve my faith, and I can only do that if I expose Muhammad Hijab for what he actually is and what he actually did. That's crazy. That's insane. Like, your faith in Islam, like, how could you even say such a thing? Your faith in Islam depends on exposing Muhammad Hijab for what he actually did. And what are you claiming that he actually did? You're claiming that he married you and then he didn't uphold what he claimed to want, or he promised you in that marriage. But as we'll see, every single woman who has ever been divorced claims the same thing about her husband. Isn't this true? Have you ever met a divorced woman who didn't claim to be abused, who didn't claim that her husband mistreated her, who didn't claim that her husband didn't live up to her expectations or didn't fulfill the promises that he made to her? That's every single marriage, every single divorce. Every single divorced woman claims the same thing about her husband, not meeting her or not meeting the expectations, not fulfilling the promises. But in this case, Muhammad Hijab is a public figure. Muhammad Hijab is someone who can be damaged by a scandal. Muhammad Hijab is someone who can be his name can be dragged through the mud because he has that fame and popularity. So tying your faith, being a Muslim, your aqidah, to exposing Muhammad Hijab, this is a big problem. This is problematic to say such a thing.
I'm not addressing the talk about the pieces of information he is parroting and copy-pasting from our religion, but I'm here talking about his authority, his trustworthiness, his extraction of his own conclusions and ahkam, jurisprudence, and making it himself into something that the Prophet ﷺ did not preach and he did not recommend. In his whole life, 23 years of da'wah, came to actually fight against harming others.
So if your problem is with what Muhammad Hijab teaches in terms of marriage, what she calls McDonald's marriage, McDonald's nikah, if you have a problem with what Muhammad Hijab is teaching, criticize that. Write a refutation, bring your dalil, bring evidences to show that what he's saying is incorrect. That is available to everyone. But that's not what you're doing. You didn't do that before. Even according to yourself, you didn't do that before. According to you, you married him. And then when things didn't turn out the way that you wanted, now you have this mission to expose the wrong ahkam, the wrong teachings of Muhammad hijab. Don't you think this raises eyebrows, raises suspicions about your intention and your motives? If what he was teaching was so you only know that something is wrong or the principles of Islam have been violated if you yourself feel injustice, if you feel wronged, then you realize, oh, these teachings are wrong. That undermines a little bit of your credibility. Okay, let's continue.
Well, you actually just simply cannot do it. Why did you completely destroy this woman's life? Because I can. Here come the screenshots about the IDF. I was there describing what Mohammed hijab has done to my life. Ali or none of...
Alright, so that's the first clip. So she claims that my life has been destroyed. He has destroyed my life. Again, go by her claim that her life has been destroyed. Why? If Muhammad hijab, assuming what you're saying is correct, he married you and then he did not give you the kind of marriage that you wanted. He didn't give you the money that you thought you were entitled to. How is that destroying your life? You get divorced and then you move on. You get divorced and you move on. If your life is destroyed by people mistreating you or not giving you your rights, then how many of us have had our lives destroyed? I've been mistreated and my rights have been usurped by Muslims many times. And by even some of these du'at or some of these shuyukh or some of these organizations, they have lied to me. They have really oppressed me or taken my rights. My life wasn't destroyed. And even if it were, I would hate to admit that publicly. I would hate to say, oh, my life, Fulan Sheikh has destroyed my life. And now my aqidah is in danger if I don't expose this to the world. Even if that were the case, I would never admit to being that kind of a victim. But I guess that's the difference between like a male mentality and a female mentality. But nonetheless, objectively speaking, how has your life been destroyed, sister? So this Muslim sister, based on what she has claimed, she was married previously and she was divorced. She has a child. She's in her 30s. And so this is, according to her, Muhammad hijab was her second husband and he divorced her. So that's 2 divorces. How is your life destroyed? Your life is not destroyed, sister. You have your whole life ahead of you. Why is your life destroyed? So if someone has let's just assume everything that you've said is correct, that Muhammad hijab didn't fulfill his promises. Does that destroy your life? Why? Can anyone explain that to me? And then you have all of these other people, whether they're in the comments or whether they're other public figures coming to her defense, as if, yeah, her life is destroyed. She's been so victimized. Even if everything she claimed were true, I wouldn't conclude that her life is destroyed. And I wouldn't necessarily conclude that Muhammad hijab has to be canceled. Muhammad hijab is the worst scum. He's the most evil predatory person. I wouldn't conclude that. It's like people don't have any experience dealing with 2 conflicting parties, because at the end of the day, that's what it is. 2 Muslims who are in a disagreement and they have claims against each other. Have you not seen that in your life? When you have 2 people who are arguing against each other, in very few circumstances is it the case that one side is 100% the oppressor and one side is 100% the oppressed. Most often, there's a misunderstanding or things get taken too far. One side is maybe 80% correct, 20% incorrect. One side, the haqq is with him maybe 60%, but 40% the haqq is with the other side. Things are not clear black and white. That's with all of these cases. But when it comes to the public sphere, then suddenly we have to have a very black and white understanding. And oh, this poor victim, her life is destroyed. Her faith has been destroyed. It's not that dramatic. It's not that, the stakes are not that high. And we're going to talk about some of these other cases because this is a repeated pattern. You have a scorned woman, ex-wife, who believes she was due more than she got. And she takes it to the court of public opinion and she mixes in all kinds of aspersions, insinuations, and it becomes a huge scandal where on one side you have the poor Muslim woman victim and the other side you have the predatory imam who groomed her and misled her. She was just like a child who didn't understand anything, and he took advantage of the poor Muslim woman who has this childlike innocence, doesn't know right from wrong. This kind of polarization is ridiculous. Like, this is something that can't be taken seriously. And I say that not to say that this woman, to judge and say she's clearly 100% wrong or she clearly is lying, everything that out of her mouth she is a lie. I don't know that. I can't claim that about her. And I can't claim that about Mohammed Hijab. As I made the disclaimer from the beginning, I can't make that judgment. How should I know? How should I say something that I don't know? But even if taking the claims of one side, if even for the sake of argument, for the sake of a hypothetical, we take what she says as being fact, I still don't see how this should be a scandal, or that her life is destroyed, or that, explain to me how your life is destroyed, sister. Even if I accept everything that you say, explain to me how your life is destroyed, how your aqidah is destroyed. That needs to be explained. So here's a second recording which explains further.
I decided to come out publicly about my case to preserve my aqidah and to spread the right Islamic ethics. After suffering from destructive doubts, and I did go through lives and courses and emails and one-to-one conversations, I came to a conclusion that the only way I'm going to be able to reconcile with my faith is only when I share all the details of what I have gone through.
I can only reconcile with my faith, like her iman is teetering on the edge, and the only way she can reconcile is to expose what I've gone through. Like, what are you? And she's saying, I went through courses, I went through live streams, I guess, one-on-one correspondence through email to solve these doubts. Like, what doubt do you have? What is bringing Islam into doubt? That's what I don't understand. Like, again, for myself, I've been wronged. People have mistreated me. People have taken my rights. I know brothers who have been terribly mistreated and oppressed by these religious figures, like people who are very prominent religious figures, imams. They don't go through a crisis of faith. They don't go through a crisis of faith. They just understand that this person, okay, even if what I believe was injustice carried out against me, that's just bad on the person. That's a reflection of who that person is, not what Islam is, not what Islam teaches. It's not Islam on trial. Just because this religious person, this religious figure has mistreated me. So why make it so dramatic? Like, why make it a matter of your faith? So if the sister is watching this, you need to reflect. You need to take a step back and question, why are you saying this? Like, why are you making it a matter of your faith? Muhammad Hijab is one person. Even if everything that you say about him is true, he's just one person. He represents no one except himself. And what he teaches, if he's teaching it according to what other scholars say, other ulama say, then it's correct. And if it's from his own opinion, from his own views or his own ijtihad, then it's on him. Islam is not on trial here. And you shouldn't make Islam be on trial by posting like a video like this and saying this is a matter of faith. This just seems like you're trying to draw sympathy. And you're trying to get Muslims to have an emotional reaction like, oh, see, Muhammad Hijab is affecting people's iman. And Muhammad Hijab he's not only mistreating these poor sisters, he's also making them leave Islam. This is not correct. And we're going to talk about the validity of such a marriage, theoretically. If such a marriage took place, a kind of Misyar marriage. What is a Misyar marriage? We're going to talk about that in a second.
Which was extremely atrocious. I realized that our Aqidah has been preserved, Quran and Sunnah and scriptures and history, through the preservation of by keeping those who are in place of trust accountable for their actions. I did this also because I had to scream in regards to the unethical wave of ideas.
So the preservation, she's saying that Islam was preserved by holding those in authority accountable for their actions. That's true, but how can you hold people accountable for their actions? You have to have a Islamic authority. You have to have an Islamic authority to be able to keep people accountable. There is no accountability through smear campaign. There is no authority through just a smear campaign. Now, we're going to talk more about the details of when is it allowed to bring up injustice. An injustice has been committed against you. We'll look at some examples of that. But there's a difference between speaking of injustice that's been committed against you versus a smear campaign where you're saying, oh, my faith is on the line. My life has been destroyed. This is a predator who wants a hotel marriage. Like those are smears. Whereas saying something like Muhammad Hijab promised me this amount of money and he didn't actually give me this amount of money. Okay, that's a very clear, concrete claim. Or I did this kind of work for Muhammad Hijab and Muhammad Hijab promised he would pay me, or he promised he would be fair in remunerating me, compensating me, and he didn't. He just said, get away, I'm not going to give you anything. Or he lowballed me or whatever. Okay, that's a very explicit claim that you can make. You're not going to exaggerate that claim and say that, oh, this proves that Muhammad Hijab is the devil. He's destroying people's iman. He's misguiding the youth. That's a smear campaign. That goes beyond what is allowed.
Circulating around marriage that started coming from him. And contrary to many other guys who spoke about these kind of ideologies before, he had a religious credibility. He had religious knowledge. People trusted him. So he was using our own Quran and Sunnah and misrepresenting them completely with complete disregard to maqasid al-sharia and usul al-fiqh regarding implying harm to people who are around you. I decided to come out and speak about this publicly.
So if you are making a claim that Muhammad Hijab is distorting Quran and Sunnah, okay, bring your dalil, bring your evidence, present, write a paper. Like where's the PDF refutation? Why don't these sisters who have these grievances and have these accusations, where are the PDF refutations? No, it's just emotional. Like, he destroyed my life. He's threatening my aqidah. I have to expose him. Like, well, okay, you can expose how he's misrepresenting the Quran and Sunnah and he ignores the maqasid al-sharia and usul al-fiqh. You can have a PDF refutation of that.
It was not because I am obsessed, but it was because I wanted to save my aqidah. Because I wanted to become and stay Muslim, to become a convinced Muslim, reconcile with it, be strong. My aqidah is strong. And I've got absolutely no any kind of doubt in my heart. The only way our scriptures have been preserved was through accountability of people who are otherwise trusted by millions of other people. If I would have spoken...
Yeah, so the accountability, as I mentioned, is coming through either Islamic authorities or it comes through refutation and debate. That's how you get accountability, not through smear campaigns, not through raising these kinds of accusations and mixing a lot of emotion with it. That's not how you have accountability in Islam.
And publicly sooner, many McDonald nikahs would have been prevented. Many women...
Okay, McDonald's nikah. What does she mean by McDonald's nikah? So it's referring to the idea of essentially a Misyar marriage. And we'll define what Misyar marriage is. But it's a marriage that the mahar is through like a McDonald's meal. You give the mahar of a McDonald's meal, and there are two male witnesses, and there is consent of the woman and the man. They get married. This is a valid nikah contract. If there are witnesses, maybe there's a wali as well. And they might say, oh no, we take the opinion that there is no wali needed in this situation. It's very questionable how that is actually implemented, because this is like a minority opinion that no wali is needed, and it's only in specific cases, like for a divorcee, a woman who is already passed, has been divorced, or maybe she has a certain age. But putting those details aside, this is what she calls a McDonald's nikah. Well, is this valid in Islam? Is this a valid marriage in Islam? Just because you have titled it McDonald's nikah to give it a bad name, is it actually valid according to the Sharia? And you'll have different opinions. You'll have different opinions, but the mahar being only a McDonald's meal, that doesn't invalidate a marriage. If you go to a woman and her wali and say, I'll marry you and your mahar is this Big Mac, halal Big Mac with fries, this is your mahar, and she accepts that, she accepts it, her wali accepts it, her guardian accepts it, that's a valid contract. That's a valid contract. And even less than that could be a valid contract, because it's a voluntary. You've entered into the contract voluntarily. And you have Islam gives you the freedom to do that as a woman. You have the freedom to get married for as little as a Big Mac. If you don't want to do that, if you don't agree with that, you think your mahar should be $2 million. That's also on the table. You can demand that. Demand that your mahar is $2 million and you will not marry anyone who gives you anything less than $2 million. You have the freedom to demand that. And he has the freedom to offer a Big Mac, and you have the freedom to accept a Big Mac as your mahar. But after you've accepted it, don't complain that, oh, that was a McDonald's nikah, it's invalid. So the value of the mahar, as long as the mahar is given, that doesn't affect the validity of the marriage. That doesn't affect the validity of the marriage according to the majority of ulama.
Women would have been saved. Many kids wouldn't have had to cry their eyes out in situation of distress when their single mothers were going through extreme struggles, dealing with whatever they are going through. If I would have spoken...
This is emotional, like, oh, the little children are screaming and crying, and their mommies are screaming and crying, and the distress and the struggles. Like, it's hard to take this. The only people who take this seriously are those who are moved by women's tears. Like, if you're moved by women's tears, a woman just cries, then the whole world will be corrupted. The whole world will be corrupted. There can be no justice, because your standard of justice is whoever is crying the most and whoever is shedding the most tears is the victim and has been mistreated. That's not correct. That's not what Islam accepts. Women are not always the victims. In many cases, women are the aggressors. Women are the ones who are committing the injustice. Women are the ones who are engaged in deception. Sometimes it's the man, sometimes it's the woman. Just because the woman cries, the only difference is that the woman has this extra weapon at her disposal, this extra tactic at her disposal, which is her tears. Her tears are an extra weapon that she can deploy. And all of these divorced women that we see, and you can test this in your own life, they all bring out the waterworks. They all claim to be victims. They all claim to be victims of abusive men who didn't fulfill their promises. I defy you to find a single woman, unless she is like Khadija radiallahu anha and the Sahabiyat, like that level of morality, which are few and far between in this day and age. Will she come and say, no, my husband treated me well. He gave me all my rights. He fulfilled all his promises. We just had a parting of ways, something like that. Or he divorced me and I have no complaints against him. In 99.9% of situations, they have complaints. They have accusations. They claim abuse. The waterworks come out. So as men, especially men who claim to be leaders, men who claim to be upholders of truth and justice, we have to understand how these conflicts play out and the types of emotional tactics that are used by women.
Sooner, many kids, single mothers, reverse sisters wouldn't have been harmed, directly or indirectly. I decided to come out publicly about my...
Okay, so she's on a mission to save these poor revert mothers and these poor Muslim women. Again, I'm not claiming that she is lying. I'm not making any type of claim about her accusations, but look at the form that the accusations are taking publicly. And look at what Allah says in the Quran. So Allah says in Surah 4:148, Allah does not like the public mention of evil except by one who has been wronged. Illa man dhulim. Except the one who has been oppressed. So if someone has been oppressed, then they can speak publicly and say, I've been oppressed, I've been wronged. But Allah doesn't give you the right to go beyond that, to go beyond that wronging or that claimed injustice that you've suffered. And Allah doesn't give others the right to come and start advocating on your behalf publicly. Someone come and say, oh yeah, this person is right, this person is wrong. How do you know? You don't have any authority. You're not the one who was wronged. And this is what we see over and over again with some of these women. They stay anonymous. They stay because they don't want the harm of backlash. They want to smear the public figure. So they go to others and have others advocate on their behalf. And this is not allowed Islamically. This is not allowed Islamically because of this verse. Because of this ayah. Allah does not love the public mention of evil except the one who has been wronged. So if you're not the one who has wronged, why are you speaking? Who gave you the right to be a judge and to decide, yeah, this person has been wronged, I'm going to come out and speak out against this? That is not allowed in Islam. Only the one, illa man dhulim. This is the clear statement of Allah. And then there's another hadith. The Prophet ﷺ said, the whole of the Muslim is sacred to his fellow Muslim, his blood, his wealth, and his honor. The honor of a Muslim is sacred. So by slandering a Muslim or by smearing his name, that's a similar violation as stealing from him or physically harming him because you have harmed his honor. And a lot of people don't take this seriously. They think that, oh, well, I feel wrong, therefore I'm going to just go out in public and start making accusations. No, people need to be very careful. These are the kinds of violations that send Muslims to the fire. A Muslim is punished, can be punished for their injustice against others, especially other Muslims. So before publicly calling people names, there has to be a good reason for it. You have to have a good justification for it. But things just get out of hand when it's a personal dispute, and we see the damage that's caused by that. So let's talk about Misyar marriage. Misyar marriage is a type of marriage where the woman voluntarily gives up or forgoes some of her rights. So in a marriage contract, the husband agrees to maintain his wife, provide her maintenance for living, for food, for clothing. He agrees to give her time, spend time with her. He agrees to spend nights with her. And this is an obligation that he has. If he does not meet the obligation, then this considers taking from her rights. This is oppression. And she has a claim against him in court, in an Islamic court. But in Misyar, you can forego some of those rights. A woman can say, okay, you don't have to pay my rent. I'll marry you and you don't have to pay my rent. Or I will marry you, you can pay my rent, and maybe I'll see you only once a month. Or maybe I'll see you only on the weekends. I'll give up, I'll agree to be a second wife or a third wife because I need the companionship, but you don't have to spend on me, you don't have to spend time with me. This is a Misyar marriage. Now, is this something that is valid Islamically? Many scholars said that this is a permitted type of marriage. Many scholars have said this is permitted. Others have said, no, this is not permitted. And why it's not permitted, it's because of the bad consequences. Inevitably, there are going to be bad consequences in this type of marriage. And this is just known through human psychology. Even if a woman agrees that, okay, I'll agree to be your wife and you don't have to pay for anything, even if she agrees to that, that's what she thinks now. What is she going to think tomorrow? What is she going to think next month? In the next 6 months, next year? And psychologically, women have this reaction. And it's part of hypergamy. And we know what hypergamy means. It's a woman's desire to be with a man who is of higher status than she is, someone who is stronger than her, more capable, more wealthy than her. Women want to be taken care of by a strong man. That's what they desire. And that's part of the attraction that she has to a man, is his ability to provide and to take care. So if she is not being provided for, instead of him paying for her rent, she has to pay the rent and she's sleeping with him, that creates a lack of attraction, and eventually it leads to being repulsed. Eventually it leads to being repulsed by the man. I'm sleeping with him and he's not even paying for my rent. I'm sleeping with him and he's not even providing for my food. Even if she's a millionaire, even if she's rich and she has all the resources and he is just like living on a minimum wage job, and she agrees voluntarily, yeah, I'll marry you and you don't have to pay for anything. Even if she agrees with that consciously, subconsciously, she grows to resent him. She grows to be disgusted by him. She grows to hate him. This is how it works in 99% of cases. And that's why these kinds of Misyar marriages, or no strings attached marriages, this is why they end up leading to hurt feelings, anger, divorce, major conflict, and children are sometimes involved. Children are left either without a father who's in their lives. Other terrible situations that happen. And then larger social consequences. Because you have this practice of Misyar where people go from their country to another country, like a more impoverished country. They go to the local women of that country, and because they're coming from overseas, they might have more money. And the local women agree to marry these foreign men who have more money, the passport bros. And they agree to a Misyar marriage. And then those men eventually divorce and they leave. And so what are those women left with? Not much. Maybe they became pregnant. Maybe they have kids now and they're divorced. So this is why some scholars, some Islamic authorities said that this is not a permissible type of marriage because of the consequences. Not because it's invalid in and of itself, but because of the consequences that follow. But at the end of the day, it is something that scholars have differed over. There is ikhtilaf on this. So let's say in the worst case scenario, let's take the case of this accuser of Muhammad Hijab. She says that he married her. Let's say that her claims are correct. Her claims are 100% true. Is this really a scandal? Is this really a scandal then? Because this just would mean that Muhammad Hijab engaged in a Misyar marriage. And whether the feminists like it or not, whether the simps like it or not, this is a valid opinion. This is an opinion that is found with reputable authorities. And it's something that has been practiced historically, traditionally, because you had Muslim travelers like Ibn Battuta. The famous Ibn Battuta who traveled throughout the Muslim world, he engaged in Misyar marriage and he documented it, his history. And there are many others who have practiced this historically. It's something that is in the Islamic tradition. And again, it's something that as a woman, you're not forced into it. It's not a coercive situation. You have the choice to accept this type of arrangement. And Islam gives you the freedom to make that choice. So then if the consequences are not to your liking, you can't then say that, oh, well, that means this marriage is invalid, or that this person is a sleazebag, he is a fasiq, because he engaged in this type of marriage. You can't say that. You agreed to it. And in the case of someone who is a celebrity, who is one of these public figures, he has fame, maybe has fortune, maybe has this notoriety. The fact of the matter is, many women want to be with a man like that. You think that there aren't many women who want to be with Muhammad Hijab and wouldn't be willing to forego some of their rights to be married to Muhammad Hijab, even as a second wife, even as a third wife, even as a fourth wife? There are plenty of women who would agree voluntarily to that type of arrangement, to a Misyar marriage where they're foregoing some of their rights. They say, yeah, sure, I will be a second wife, and you don't have to provide for me, or you don't have to spend as much time with me. You have your first wife. Just give me one weekend. Just give me this time, limited amount of time. Just give me a few nights. They're willing to do that. They're willing to do. Women, by their nature, many women are willing to get into that type of arrangement. Sometimes it's the best option that they have. And you ask some of these women, you can survey, would you like to be the exclusive monogamous wife of a janitor, or the second wife of a movie star, a celebrity, a wealthy celebrity, a tall, dark and handsome celebrity who only spends 5% of his time with you? His 5% of his available time he spends with you, 95% with his other wife or wives. Would you agree to, is that more preferable, or to be married to the janitor? And many women will admit that they prefer the celebrity. That's your preference. You're the one who agreed, or you're the one who pursued this celebrity. And when it didn't work out, because that's the thing that a lot of these women have in mind. They think that I just want to get my foot in the door. Because if I agree to be a second wife and I agree to have that one weekend per month with this celebrity, he's going to fall in love with me and he's going to become infatuated with me and he's going to dump his first wife. And I'm going to become his whole world. That's the kind of thought process that the women have. So they roll the dice. They take the risk. Okay? And it's not really a risk. They don't psychologically perceive it as a risk. They think it's a done deal. Of course, he's going to love me more than he loves anyone else. Of course. And then when he doesn't love you and put you on that pedestal, oh, then he's abusive. He hasn't fulfilled his promises. No, he hasn't fulfilled the promises that you had in your head for your own future. And that's why you're so angry. That's why you feel so cheated. You thought again, I'm not talking about this Muslim sister or Mohammed hijab. I'm just speaking theoretically about women's psychology. In many cases, their emotions that they feel are like a reality to them. The feelings are their reality. Facts don't care about your feelings, but in a woman's minds, in the minds of many women, their feelings are facts. So when in her mind, she feels like, oh, we're going to have this beautiful future together. She's fantasizing and imagining, oh, I'm going to be with this celebrity and we're going to travel the world and I'm going to be his wife and he's going to be so devoted to me. Everything has been played out in their minds. When that reality doesn't come to fruition, they feel like, oh, promises were broken. Promises were not fulfilled. I was cheated. I was abused. Now I'm questioning my aqidah. My Islam is now in question. This is how it goes. This is how it goes. And there's a common trope about women being influenced by Hollywood, by these romantic movies and romantic stories of your Prince Charming coming and sweeping you off your feet and living happily ever after. And then you get into marriage and it's difficult. There is conflict. There's responsibilities. And I have to actually meet my end of the bargain. And this is how dissatisfaction in marriage creeps up. And if a woman is smart, she realizes that, well, I was just deluded and my expectations were all incorrect. And I have to reform my expectations to make this marriage work. Other women who are not smart, or who are not mature enough, they think that they are the victims. They have been abused. He didn't meet my storybook Hollywood expectations of marriage. Therefore, he's an abuser. He's taking advantage of me. He hasn't fulfilled his promises to me. And then they push for divorce. They create this messy, disgusting situation where a family is destroyed. Many such cases, right? Many such cases. And if you're married or you're divorced or you're older than 30 years old, if you yourself haven't experienced something like this, then you know a lot of people who have. So what really is the situation? Like, let's take this Muslim woman's claims at face value and say that, okay, fine, there was a marriage. There was a marriage. It was clearly a Misyar marriage. It was some kind of Misyar marriage. You agreed to be a second wife. Clearly, you're getting a lot out of it. Why would a celebrity want to marry you, who is a divorcee, with a child, and you're in your 30s? Okay, so you're not, if it were some like 16-year-old, 17-year-old virgin, that's a different situation. Or that's something where your marriageability or your marital value on the marriage marketplace is much higher if you're a 17-year-old, 18-year-old, 19-year-old virgin this is your first marriage. But no, you're divorced. And women hate to acknowledge this reality, but it's true. You are divorced, you're in your 30s, and it doesn't matter what other qualities that you have. Like, this is a fact. So he his marriage ability or his value on the marriage marketplace is much, much higher than yours. That's a fact. He agrees to marry you, and it doesn't work out. Where's the scandal? Where is the terrible crime that has been committed? That's the question that I'm left with. Even if we say Mohammed Hijab, he agrees to this Misyar marriage, and he agrees to give you X, Y, or Z, and then it doesn't work out. For any number of reasons, it could not work out. Maybe you didn't meet his expectations. Maybe you didn't fulfill something. How is this a scandal? This is just another he said, she said conflict that happen every day. This happens every day. Every single case of divorce is the same thing. He said, she said. He did not meet my expectations. He made promises that he did not fulfill. She made promises that she did not fulfill. She mistreated me. She caused fights. He didn't take out the trash. She didn't, dress up for me, whatever. Everyone has complaints. Everyone believes themselves to be mistreated, especially in these divorce cases. How is this a scandal? And our responsibility as Muslims in the world is to not create these don't make it into a scandalous situation. Take it for what it is. Okay, another scorned wife. Another conflict, another marital dispute. Let's not make it into a scandal. Let's let people who can handle the situation, authorities who can handle, let them handle it. This is just another marital dispute. And it gets very ugly because in some cases, there are accusations of zina. There are accusations that go beyond. So there are many cases like this that we've had. Remember the Noman Ali Khan case? The smear campaign against Noman Ali Khan. The smear campaign against Tariq Ramadan. The smear campaign against this other American da'i, Osama Cannon. All of these different scandals. Or Fateh, Safarjik. Fateh also accused. And this is the nature of the smear campaign. This is the injustice, is that they even elevate it. They insinuate that, oh, this person is a predator. This person is luring unsuspecting women into the hotel room. This is hotel seduction. And so they imply that this is zina. They imply that this is some kind of sexual impropriety. And this is a huge crime. Alhamdulillah, with the case of Mohammed Hijab, it hasn't gone to that level, even though some are trying to make it into that. Some are trying to spin it into that because they want as much fitna and scandal as possible to smear Islam and to cause confusion. But in these other cases, they create these insinuations about, oh, he is a sexual predator. He's luring innocent girls into the hotel room. And this is a vile crime. And we've already gone over the ayat in Surah Nur. We can read those ayat just as a reminder real quick because it's important. So from verse 11, indeed, those who came with falsehood are a group among you. Do not think it bad for you. Rather, it's good for you. For every person among them is what punishment he has earned from the sin. And he who took upon himself the greater portion thereof, for him is a great punishment. So this, in the previous episode, we talked about the context, the Ifk incident with the Sahaba. So I won't repeat that lesson. Why, when you heard it, did not the believing men and believing women think good of themselves and say this is an obvious falsehood? So this is telling us how to deal with these scandals. especially when they are involving accusations of sexual impropriety. Why didn't you have husn al-dhan? Why didn't the believers think good and say, this is obvious falsehood. This is obvious. You're spreading lies. When you heard it. So you just hear an accusation and then you just shut it down. I don't want to, why are you spreading these lies? Why did they who slander not produce for it 4 witnesses? And when they did not produce the witnesses, then it is they in the sight of Allah who are the liars. So you're spreading accusations, you're spreading insinuations, and you didn't produce 4 witnesses. Therefore, you are in the sight of Allah liars. And if it had not been for the favor of Allah upon you and His mercy in this world and the hereafter, you would have been touched for that lie in which you were involved by a great punishment. When you received it with your tongues and said with your mouths that of which you had no knowledge and thought it was insignificant, while it was in the sight of Allah tremendous. So this goes back to the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, that the honor of a Muslim is sacred. So spreading this type of accusation without witnesses, without the requisite evidence to the requisite authorities, you just wanted to spread it in order to slander someone, to smear them, to harm them. Even if they have harmed you, this is not allowed. This is not allowed in Islam. This is significant in the sight of Allah. And why, when you heard it, did you not say, it is not for us to speak of this? You don't have to speak of it. This is not an issue for the court of public opinion. Allah warns you against returning to the likes of this conduct ever if you should be believers. So when Allah warns of something, that's the most serious warning that you can ever get is from the Creator of the heavens and the earth. So important to be reminded of these ayat in Surah An-Nur. When it comes to these other scandals, okay, Noman Ali Khan scandal, people have a dispute. There are women who claim that they didn't get their rights. They were married, but they didn't get their rights. So they go to the public to create a scandal, to accuse him, to smear his name. To this day, where is the Islamic authority? Where is the authorities who have come in and shown that, yes, this person has done something wrong? Noman Ali Khan did do X, Y, Z. There's nothing. There's nothing. It's only the man's name has been dragged through the mud. Same with this other brother, Osama Cannon. And his case was very sad. Like, his was a very sad case. And the thing is that people think, Daniel, you're the last person to defend Noman Ali Khan. You're the last person to defend Osama Cannon. Because these are individuals, especially someone like Osama Cannon, who are liberals. They are spreading all kinds of liberal, feminist ideas. They are in favor of reforming Islam. That's what their careers have involved to a greater or lesser extent. And you're opposed to all that. Isn't that the case, Daniel? So why are you defending them? Or defending Tariq Ramadan, for example. And I always give the same answer. I critique and criticize people on the basis of their public statements. I criticize them for liberalizing Islam, for introducing feminism into Islam, for reforming Islam. I criticize them on a clear public record. Not on the basis of accusations, not on the basis of claims, especially the kinds of claims that fall into qatf, which is what Surah An-Nur was referring to. Accusations of that kind of nature, of a sexual nature, like, that's not what my critique of them is based off of. If you really want to critique these figures, you critique them on the basis of their public statements. Just what I said about Muhammad Hijab. If you really want to challenge Muhammad Hijab on his views on marriage and the ahkam of marriage, do it publicly. Do it on the basis of his statements. Take his statements and write the PDF refutation. Make the video analyzing and bringing your dalil. Not on the basis of, oh, he's secretly a pervert, or he's secretly mistreating people secretly, or in his private life. So the case with Osama Cannon, And he's one of these. He was, because he passed away. He was accused at the end of his life because he suffered from ALS. This is I'm thinking, if I recall correctly, his muscles stopped working, or his nervous system stopped working. So he was paralyzed. He couldn't move. He couldn't speak. And he's a young man. He was very young, late 30s, I believe. And a lot of people loved him a lot. He was charismatic, and he was teaching Islam, had his organization. And then people within that organization came out against him and accused him of being abusive. And they said he had a secret marriage, and he was all kinds of aspersions, insinuations about who he was. And the man is paralyzed. He can't even speak to defend himself. So he's taking advantage of women. He had a second wife, a young second wife, and he mistreated her. And the irony of that situation was that woman, that second wife, came out publicly and said, no, he didn't mistreat me. He was a good husband. She even came out to defend him. And then he passed away from his disease, from his condition. So may Allah have mercy on him. But this is the type of smear campaign that is based on what? It's the worst type of smearing and slandering, portraying someone as a pervert. And the enemies of Islam immediately pick this up. In the case of Muhammad Hijab, the person who immediately comes to smear Muhammad Hijab and to claim that, see, this shows that Muhammad Hijab is a pervert, is none other than David Wood. You can see all of the tweets, even they're doing a live stream on it tonight. He's done multiple live streams. Hotel wife scandal. Joking, leak texts, all of this. So the enemies of Islam are feasting on this type of scandal. But David Wood or APUS or any of these Zionist enemies of Islam, they would have a problem if Muhammad Hijab had even a second wife. They would have a problem if the age gap between Muhammad Hijab and his first wife was more than 5 years. They would have a problem with that. They would have a problem if Muhammad Hijab even had a second wife. And unfortunately, a large percentage of Muslims would also have a problem. That would also be a scandal. Imagine, like, if Muhammad Hijab or me, let's speak about me. Like, I come out and say, oh, here's my second wife. It's not a secret. It's public. This is my public second wife. That would be a scandal. These people, all of these scum would call me a predator, would call me all kinds of misogynist, woman hater, etc., etc. It would be a scandal. Or if I said, or if I revealed, oh, my wife, Khalid, actually there is a big age gap. I married her when she was only 16 years old or 17 years old or whatever. That would also be a huge scandal. That would also be a huge scandal. I actually made this poll on Twitter. I said, look at this. Would you be scandalized if you found out that a popular Muslim speaker had married a second wife who was 16 years old? Almost 35% say, yes, it's scandalous. So 1/3. Now, obviously, there are non-Muslims who are responding to this. But, non-Muslims often pose as Muslims online. So when you see something as a scandal, something has been made into a scandal, and all the comments are, oh, this is so scandalous, this is disgusting, many of those are non-Muslims too. So it's relevant that the audience, the overall online audience, 35% and these are my audience mainly, and they're, you know that my audience is mainly Muslims, are not going to have a problem with second wives. Nonetheless, over 1/3 would find it scandalous for a Muslim speaker to have a second wife who is younger, 16 years old, even though there's nothing wrong Islamically. There's nothing impermissible. There's no ikhtilaf that this is allowed, that this is perfectly halal. It would still be scandalous. So this is why I'm saying, like, if even what this woman, this Muslim woman accusing Muhammad hijab, if everything that she accused of him were true, that it was a Misyar marriage, what's the scandal? We're talking in context of an audience where they even think polygyny in and of itself, having a second wife in and of itself, is a scandal. Or what if I told you that a Muslim man, he has a wife and his desires are not satisfied by that one wife. So because of his desire, he marries a second wife because of his desires. Are you scandalized by that? The reality is many Muslims, unfortunately, are scandalized by that. Because the whole idea of men's sexuality is a scandal. The idea of men having sexual urges is a scandal. It's seen as something disgusting. It's seen as something that's perverse. Oh, brother, the only reason that you should get married is for deen, so that you can have someone to read Quran with. That's the only reason to get married. This is how some people think. This is how some Muslims think, because they've adopted a kind of Christian understanding of marriage and a Christian understanding of sexuality. This is not Islam. Islam recognizes that Allah has created men and women with these desires. And Allah has legislated the correct avenue to fulfill those desires. And part of the avenue that Allah has legislated is the ability to marry a second, a third, or a fourth wife, among other options. So this is something that is perfectly acknowledged within Islam. Muslims don't deny human nature. Muslims don't deny how Allah has created human beings. So why should it be a scandal? Excuse me. Like, this is the most all of these scandals are simp scandals. Like, you're only scandalized if you're a simp. If you're like a normal Muslim man, like, the worst case is that Muhammad hijab was married and he didn't fulfill some of his rights, some of her rights, in which case he should make good on that. But is it a scandal? Is it something that my faith is in question and now we have to cancel him? We have to cancel him because he's an immoral person? How? Why? That's in the worst case. That's taking her word for it at face value. So now I want to look at your comments in the super chat. If you have any points that you want to share, put that in the super chat and I will inshallah read it as long as it's appropriate. The other point, just the last point that I want to make, is I've already mentioned how the enemies of Islam will try to use these controversies in order to smear Islam and to smear Muslims. But did you know that there's actually intelligence agencies that try to create these situations and create these scandals in order to defame Islam? That's also something that happens. You have intelligence agencies like the CIA. It was revealed through the Snowden leaks over a decade ago that intelligence agencies in the West try to generate sexual scandals in order to undermine and discredit speakers who are going against Western interests, or are too conservative, or are too, speaking out against Israel, or what have you. This has been revealed. And this is something that they do historically as well. It's called compromat. Compromising material that the US government and the Israeli government and other intelligence agencies, they try to dig up through spying, compromising material to create that they then leak into the public in order to discredit these popular figures or these dissident figures, whether they're religious or they're non-religious, like Martin Luther King, for example. This was revealed. COINTELPRO revealed this whole tactic, and it's being used to this day. This is what the whole Epstein controversy is about, Jeffrey Epstein. And what he was doing was collecting material, compromising material, videos, photographs of different politicians in order to control those politicians. The same can be done, and arguably has been done, against Muslims, against Muslim leaders. And you had this was revealed by the Snowden leaks. Top secret document reveals that the NSA, one of these US intelligence agencies, spied on the corn habits as part of plan to discredit radicalizers. We have to discredit the radicals, so we're going to spy on them. And if there's no material, we'll create the material. We'll create the scandal. It's easy enough to do. So that's another thing that has to be kept in mind, that the enemies of Islam know that these scandals can be created to discredit. And that's why Islam has put in place these safeguards. That we have husn al-dhan. That we don't, just like we read in Surah An-Nur, we say, this is an obvious lie. This is an obvious lie. This is obvious fabrication. Where are the 4 witnesses? If you don't have the upright male witnesses to testify, then we consider you to be a liar. You are a liar in the sight of Allah. This cuts off the ability for these intelligence agencies and these enemies of Islam to smear and to slander and to discredit our religious leadership. If we didn't have that kind of standard in place, then any Muslim leader could be accused of anything. Any Muslim leader could be accused of the most vile deeds behind closed doors. This is why Islam puts these standards in place. It's a very high bar to meet. And then the other point that I wanted to make is that, isn't it interesting how women want to have the freedom to get married without a wali, without a guardian. Women want to have the independence where I don't need my father's permission to get married. I don't need my father's permission to travel to a foreign country and have my education and have my career. I don't need my father there with me. I don't need my wali to travel with me. I want to be independent. And then a bad result comes along. You have these consequences of your bad choices, and then you don't want to deal with that. You want to be bailed out. Isn't that so convenient for women? Women don't want to have any accountability. They want maximum freedom, maximum independence, but they want to have zero accountability. This is a running theme that we see. Islam puts these safeguards in place. The requirement of a guardian, the requirement of witnesses, the requirement for a mahar. All of this is in place for the protection of everyone involved. When you start trying to find shadh opinions, anomalous opinions in fiqh, and actually this can technically be permissible because there's ikhtilaf on this issue, you're not only compromising in a way that threatens your future self, you're also creating a situation where no one can come and help you. No one can come and help you because there are no guardrails of accountability to hold anyone accountable. You decided that you don't need a wali. You decided that you don't need to have a public announcement. You decided that you don't need to have your father present or whatever. So those two things go hand in hand. If you decide voluntarily to follow a kind of Shev opinion, to go into non-standard fiqh because you want to exercise your choice, you want to exercise your freedom, then be prepared for the consequences. If things go wrong, that's a risk that you take. You have to pay the cost of that. Don't push that cost onto us, onto the Muslim community, onto others. Unfortunately, many women do this. They want all of the authority, all of the freedom with none of the consequences. Okay, I want to hear your thoughts. Let's see. Van Gote. Classic Daniel being late and continuing with the stream like nothing happened. Subhanallah. Oh, what a terrible fitna it was that I was late. What kind of complaint is? Are you my employer? Like, are you, because you contributed a $5 or a $5 super chat, like you are my boss? That you're chastising me that I was late? This is a free show. This is a free show that you can watch at your convenience. I forgot where I signed an employment contract with you and you can talk to me like I'm your servant. I missed that. Yeah, it's hilarious. Like, oh, Daniel is late. Like, Daniel is late. Like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I wasn't here to dance for you right at the moment that you wanted. I apologize. Oh, that's terrible. That's a terrible crime. Like, if you are going to be a patron and patronize me with big money and fund our operations and fund our work, okay, then you have the right to say that, well, this is not meeting my standards, Daniel, when you're 5 minutes late or 10 minutes late. Then you have something to say, and then I have to explain myself. But I don't have to explain anything to you who are just watching this show for free. Shadman, appreciate it. Reptilian Lord says, have you seen the video of an Iranian in America, Farzin Yazdani, having his children stolen by CPS? Reminded me of your Sweden CPS video and secularism. No, I didn't hear of that case, but it's very common, unfortunately. Whether the children are taken by CPS or because of divorce proceedings, there's very little rights that parents have in the West. Parental rights are constantly being eroded. And we've talked about that in previous episodes. Sweden is, I think, much worse than America, though. Sweden and some of these European countries are much worse. In Texas, or in the United States, it depends on the state. If you're in Texas, it might be better than if you're in California or in New York. Nabil says, her words sound like they're written by Rabbi Ferris, mixing truth with falsehood, and Allah al-Musta'an. I don't know if I go that far. She sounds like a typical woman. She sounds like a typical woman. We've heard it a million times before. We've seen the women's tears a million times before. Men actually don't talk like this. Men, as I said, like men, if they've been wronged, typically you don't go and start crying that you're a victim, and you don't start saying, oh, my whole life was destroyed. That's a female response. That's like female psychology. That's why you have to take into account the female psychology and the male psychology in these kinds of cases. I think Elon and the Zionists are sending their agents to ruin hijab's reputation because he talks about Palestine and against Elon and the Zionists. I don't know if that's plausible. There are a lot of other ways that you can destroy someone's reputation that are more direct and have more of the telltale signs of being like a psyop. That's not one of them. Omar Corleone says, "Behibbek, wallah, ya Daniel. Barakallahu feek. Appreciate it, brother. May Allah love you as well. From Masr, from Misr. So very happy to see Muslims watching from Egypt. Jazakallah khair for your super chat. Allah love you, brother. Appreciate the super chat. KS. Brother, what would be your argument on spiritualism, those who believe in a higher power but do not believe in religion and think it is controlling? So this is the fastest growing faith trend, if you can call it faith, believing in God but not wanting to be associated with any religion. And the thing is that if you don't believe in religion, then what you think is God is just your own whims and desires, like your own biases and your own perceptions. That's what your God ends up being. If you believe that God, if there is God, you believe in God, then God is independent from you and your mind and what you want and what you think is right and wrong. God is an independent power, unless you think you yourself are God. If you think that there is a God outside of yourself, then you should seek out what God has said. You should seek out God's revelation, what God has commanded, what God says is right and wrong, how God says to live life. If you don't think that that's what God does, that God is just your buddy and God is just your friend, you essentially think that God is yourself. Whatever you think is right, whatever you feel is correct, whatever you feel should be done, that's what God approves of. You have no independent standard other than your own desires, what you yourself think is right or wrong. This is a kind of solipsism. This is a type of ego worship. And it's clearly wrong. It's clearly delusional to think of yourself as God. So that in itself is a refutation. That there has to be an independent authority and an independent standard. So you should seek that out. It's going to be with another religion. Other religions make claims, they have traditions, and you can determine and you can investigate which religions are clearly man-made and which religions are not. Which religion is not. You can do that independent investigation, and it will lead you to Islam. Muslim couples need to learn about not cleaning their dirty laundry in public. We have a lot of such couples who do that. Yeah, exactly. Like, this is a personal dispute. Like, even when it comes to, like I said, every single divorce case that I see between Muslims or non-Muslims, oftentimes it gets very ugly. It gets very ugly. It gets very heated. A lot of accusations are made. The only difference when one of the partners is a public figure is that now there's an extra weapon that you can yield against your ex. Now you can go to public and start airing dirty laundry and ruining that person's reputation, your ex-husband or your ex-wife's reputation. And they inevitably exercise that option. They inevitably take the route of public smearing. And we see this again and again and again. And as Muslim observers in the Ummah, we have to be smarter. We have to just recognize, okay, this is not a scandal. This is just two disputing parties who are going at it. One side is making claims to make the other side look as bad as possible, and the other side is making claims in response to make the other side look as bad as possible, and it should just be ignored. Like, let's just move on. And until we can get to that point, I have to keep saying, giving the same message. I have to keep, because it's really demoralizing when you look at the responses to this Muhammad hijab scandal, like, oh, I can never watch another Muhammad hijab. Everything that he says has been a waste. Everything that he does is just completely discredited because of this. And oh my God, like, just chill. Just chillax. This is not that big of a deal. Same thing with Noman Ali Khan. Same thing with all these individuals. Like, why is your faith, like, your faith is trembling, is shaking? That's what they're putting. And then you have all these Christians coming, all of these atheists and Jews coming into the comments and trying to pour fuel on the fire. These are not scandals. This is just a marital dispute. Even if we, again, Muhammad hijab claims that there was no marriage, so I'm speaking only hypothetically. Even if there were a marriage, it would not be a scandal. It should not be a scandal. It at best is a marital dispute, and you have to have the correct authorities to deal with that. Basic Art, appreciate your super chat. Earth Warden says women can't take L's. If a woman was rejected or divorced, especially by someone successful, she will usually make huge lies out of spite. Unfortunately, that's what we see very often. That's why we have to take claims with a grain of salt. Again, I'm not claiming that this woman is making huge lies. I'm not claiming that. But I'm also not going to take her claims at face value. Any other comments? Yeah, I see some dumb Christians in the comments. Like, you can't take these Christians seriously. Like, according to Christianity, like, the highest ideal is to be celibate. Like, sexual desire is something that is the original sin. Like, this is the sinful nature of man. Like, this is something that is seen as from the devil, like your desires. Islam doesn't have that perspective. That's just a lie that you've created in your fake religion, in your made-up religion. Christians and feminists are coping hard. Christianity is against human biology. Pretty obvious. Yeah, the feminists, like I said, the feminists and the Christians would be offended just by the idea of a second wife. So they'd be offended even if there's an age gap. Like, these Christians are so cucked that even the idea of a age gap, like, imagine if a 50-year-old man marries a 19-year-old or a 22-year-old, they would still find that highly wrong and disgusting. They'd call him a predator, or they'd call him a groomer. Like, that's what many of these Christians actually believe. You hear about the guy that claims to be the Mahdi. Yeah, there are many people who have claimed that. And they're all, like, very obviously losers. So there hasn't been, like, any one of these people who haven't been losers. Okay. All right, I'm not seeing any relevant comments. Just the same spam. Okay, guys, so I hope you appreciated the analysis. Hopefully it clarified. Just want to emphasize that I didn't take anyone's side in this discussion. I just left it on the basis of the public facts. And I'm not in a position to judge. One side claims there was no marriage. One side claims that there was a marriage and her rights were not fulfilled. And until there is an authoritative Islamic authority who can tell us one way or another, we don't have any basis to judge. And at the worst case, it's just a marital dispute. At the worst case, it's just a marital dispute, not a scandal, not a opportunity to cancel Mohammed hijab, not an opportunity to call him a predator or to call him this or that. Yeah. Okay. So appreciate everyone who contributed a super chat. We'll have more Haqiqatjou next week. And we can talk about a lot of different evolving situation in the Middle East with India and Pakistan. Who knows where that's going to end up? It seems like things are on again, off again. Will there be a war between India and Pakistan or not? It's a developing situation. War with Iran. Is the US going to strike Iran? It's not clear. There's still ongoing discussions, negotiations, indirect negotiations taking place between Iran and the US. Will that lead anywhere? I don't know. If you have an idea or you want a topic to be discussed on future Haqiqat shows, leave a comment under the video telling me. I do read the comments, so feel free to give your perspective. And yeah, so I appreciate everyone's watching, and don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter. You can find the link to the newsletter below in the description. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. About 40% of you or more watch, but you don't subscribe. So go ahead and subscribe to the channel, and we will talk to you, inshallah, on the next Haqiqat show. Until next time, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.